Community, welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep the Mining podcast. And today we're talking to Jo Battershill, who's the MD and CEO of Anglesey Mining, who are a UK mining listed company on the London Stock Exchange and have interest in Wales, Sweden and Canada. The main property is their Parys Mountain project in Wales, which hosts a significant polymetallic zinc, copper, lead, silver and gold deposit. Jo has a mining geology background, but also has worked in finance and has a well-rounded career. And more recently, he's worked in some non-executive directorship capacities for a few mining entities. And he's here today to tell us more about their Parys project in Wales. So, Jo, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Rob. It's been I've been looking forward to doing this for some time. So good to be finally here.
Yeah, and I appreciate you taking the time to tell us about, obviously, a mining project in Wales. But before we do that, I wonder if you can just give us an overview of yourself, a background about yourself, so the audience knows who the guest is.
Yeah, sure. Look, appreciate that. So I'm a Cameron School of Mines graduate. Graduated in '95, I think it was. Feels like a long time ago now. Whilst I was down in Cornwall, I spent all of my holidays working at South Crofty. So developed a bit of a taste for the underground. Upon graduating, worked in tunnelling for a little while, Jubilee Line extension, and then over to Hong Kong. And whilst I was in Hong Kong, one of the only English newspapers you could get was the Weekend Australian, which we used to get on a Monday, and back in the days of print job adverts, probably before you were doing the recruitment side of things. The job section was 17, 18 pages every week of jobs in, for geologists and mining engineers and metallurgists in Australia. So I thought I'd better go and have a piece of that. Moved to Australia, worked for Western Mining. Pretty much got a job straight away. Did best part of a decade with Western Mining. Started as a mine geologist in the nickel, and then basically went through several roles into and then it culminated as business development manager for the nickel business unit. So it was great, wonderful company and wonderful business. And after that, I my last role was selling all the mines in Kambalda, which sort of created the real, the current sort of junior nickel sector in the Australian market, really, which was a great time, great job doing that. But it got me introduced to a lot of the brokers, a lot of the bankers, and so I moved on to the dark side, as they say, and then spent the best part of 12 years with firstly with Hartley's in Perth, which is a smaller broker, which is now Euros Hartley's, so a little bit bigger now than it was when I was there. Then I went across to Sydney with Citigroup, did 3 years with Citigroup as a mining analyst, and then got headhunted by UBS and was at UBS for the best part of a decade. UBS actually moved me back to the UK about almost 6 years ago now, actually, which was great. I mean, I wanted to work in London, so it got me a lot of exposure in London. But all these things come to an end, and I kind of had enough of working in the city as a broker and pushing people's other stories. I thought it'd be good to go and get some of my own and go back onto the corporate side of mining again. So here I am, really. There was a little stint at Canaccord in London in between the two, but yeah, I mean, I left. I joined Anglesey as CEO on the 1st of August last year. So it's sort of 7 months in, and having a ball and lots to do, lots to see, and only the start of the journey, hopefully.
Yeah. So I wonder if you can just tell us a little bit about the company, Anglesey, and then we can go into more about the project specifics as well. So yeah, I wonder if you can just give us an overview of Anglesey.
Yeah, sure. So, look, Anglesey is might be well known to a lot of your listeners, Rob. Listed in 1988. So it's been on and it listed on the main board premium segment. So it's been around for a long time, and the primary asset was always Parys Mountain on the island of Anglesey, or Isle of Anglesey, as we say. And so it's there was a first attempt when it listed in '88. The company raised about £6.5 million. They had permission to sink a shaft on some of the more modern discoveries. They sunk the shaft, put in when that goes down to 300 meters, put in a kilometre of underground development, did some bulk sampling, and built a pilot plant. And they, for all intents and purposes, they had this thing up and running, or as a sort of a first pass. And then they got a bit waylaid with the Gulf War. They went to raise some money to extend the shaft and basically flesh out the feasibility study and fully develop it. And Gulf War hit, zinc price fell 40% in 3 months and stayed there for a decade. So it sort of it sat around not doing a lot really. I mean, interestingly, since 1997, there's only been 27 drill holes drilled on the Parys Mountain project, and we're drilling another 10 at the moment, but they're all infill drilling. So there's an enormous amount of unfinished business here with respect to exploration and extensions to the known mineralization. So that's we can touch on that later, but that's really exciting, I think. And then the second attempt at sort of developing the Parys project was in 2008. A group of Australians came over with a company called Western Metals. A few of them moved to the island, spent 3 or 4 months doing due diligence, and they put a bid in for the asset. And they offered they offered the board 29 million Australian dollars to acquire the project, which was accepted by the board at the time. So these Australian guys, who a few of them I know quite well, used to work in Western Mining. They went back to Australia to raise the finance to complete the transaction, and that was September 2008. And we all know what happened. The rest is history with respect to the markets from that point. So, there's been 2 sort of failed attempts, but interesting, the project never failed for any technical reasons. It's failed because of market timing, which is very unfortunate for the previous guys, but I guess that's kind of our opportunity now and the current shareholders' opportunity now. So when the Australian bid fell over, the board sort of pivoted to iron ore because the base metals market was looking pretty bleak at that time, and the company had some iron ore assets in Canada. So the former CEO moved across to Canada, and they spanned those assets out into a company called Labrador Iron Mine Holdings, which had a very successful development. At that point, the company, the Labrador got to a market cap of $700-800 million, and Anglesey owned 45%. And then the iron ore price fell in 2013, and 2013, and that project sort of had to close, and we end up getting diluted down. So. We own 12. We still own 12% of Labrador Iron Mine Holdings. I'm not involved in that. I see myself as sort of just a shareholder, or Anglesey as just a shareholder. But they're quietly working away in the background, trying to get another development going there. So we wish them all the best. And then our other asset, which came in about 7 or 8 years ago now, is this Grängesberg iron ore project in Sweden, which I think we've got sort of a tiger by the tail there, Rob. It's a very, very sizable asset with a again, a bit like Parys Mountain, a long history of production. It was closed in 1989 when the iron ore price hit $27 a ton. So, and obviously it's a very different environment now. So that's a brief history. I started the 1st of August. We're a fairly lean team. On the executive, the board have been very helpful and very, very active in sort of helping me to this point. We've introduced a couple of new directors, Namrata Verma, who runs a mining debt consulting business, very successful, and Andrew King, who used to head up the Standard Chartered's mining banking team in Asia and the UK. So the guys who were running this before, they're all still on the board. And they're adding value, as and when they can. So look, it's running well at the moment, running well.
Yeah, and I was going to say, those people that don't know the UK or Wales that well, whereabouts is the island off of Wales?
Yeah, so basically, I live down here in Guildford, and if I drive up, I go up the M6, and just before I get to Manchester, I turn left, and you basically just drive along the north coast of Wales until you get to the Snowdonia National Park, and basically it's an island opposite Snowdonia. It's for anybody that wants to come up and have a look, they're more than welcome, and we'll take visitors site whenever we can. But it is a beautiful part of the world. It really is a beautiful part, stunning part of the world. They do their cast.
I was going to say, I can imagine that is, and I might even have to take a visit up there myself.
You should definitely come up. Absolutely.
Yeah. So what do you think about the Parys Mountain project? And obviously it hasn't been developed yet. Why is that? Obviously, I know you've been mentioned about the history, but obviously, what have been the major catalysts as to why it hasn't been developed?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, obviously, I touched on the two sort of previous attempts. Rob, I think times have changed a little bit. I think we're price takers in this industry, and we're always going to be dependent upon commodity prices. And I think maybe certainly the attempt in 1991. I mean, they were very unfortunate not to have got it built. Well, I guess maybe they were fortunate not to build it before the prices fell. But even then, I mean, the copper started sort of generating quite a bit of interest at that point. And I think initially this was seen as more of a zinc project than a copper project. Whereas now we look at it, and because of the inclusion of what we call the Northern Copper Zone, which is a large, slightly lower grade part of the project, the PEA we've put together, it clearly demonstrates that this is primarily by revenue and by EBITDA, it's primarily a copper mine now. So it's about 40% of the revenue, between 40 and 45, depending on prices, is generated from revenue, and zinc is about sort of 35, and then the rest is sort of silver, lead, and gold. So I mean, I think there's been a slight difference there. I mean, as a what do they used to say? I mean, when I was working for brokers, it was zinc stinks, right? I mean, it was always very difficult to make money in the zinc space. So I think that's changed, and also there's the demand for zinc is appreciably stronger than it was. But I think the other thing, Rob, is attitudes towards scale as well. I mean, I think I've been in this industry long enough now to know that I think it's actually harder to permit a new operation than it is to find one. And that's no disrespect to exploration geologists by any stretch of the imagination. That's notoriously hard as well. But I think if you've got a new large discovery, getting it permitted it may not be impossible, but it can take an exceptionally long time. And I looked at. I mean, I've followed this story on and off for many years, and I was always sort of interested that there was obviously a lot of history up here, and there were obviously some permits or planning permissions in place, and now obviously I've been in the CEO role for 7 months. I know exactly what's there, and these planning permissions are very valuable. And I think the scalability side of things is that it's even without the planning permissions we have. I think these days it's going to be a lot easier to permit, or going forward, it's going to be a lot easier to permit small projects than it is the large projects that are deemed to be very, very sort of environmentally destructive. We can leave a very, very small footprint here, over and above what's already been done. And obviously there's a significant footprint here, which is part of the heritage of the site. I mean, first mining was here was in the Bronze Age 4,500 years ago, and then the Romans had a go. And then there was extensive mining in the 18th and 19th century. So, and the locals are very proud of that, as are we. I mean, we own a lot of the land freehold. And look, I mean, we sounds cliched, but we see ourselves as part of that heritage, and whatever we try and do now, and hopefully we get this thing through to development and production. We just see ourselves as sort of the next stage of the archaeology of this site going forward. So, we take all that very seriously, but I think that you've got to make the most of the metal price cycle, and I think we're coming into we're already in, and potentially in an extended period of high metal prices. Whether that's inflation driven or currency driven, whatever. I mean, I think from a Parys Mountain perspective, that's beneficial, but also that scalability. I mean, this will never be a big mine, Rob. I mean, it's the PEA is for 1 million tons per annum, which sounds quite big as an underground operation. That is relatively sizable, but from a product perspective, we're looking at between 15 and 20,000 tons per annum of copper equivalent, and the split there is about sort of 8,000 tons of copper, 7,000 tons of lead, and 8,000 tons of zinc, plus 600,000-700,000 ounces of silver a year. And we think we can do that very profitably for 12 years is the mine life under the PEA. And there is extensive exploration upside along strike and at depth from the known ore bodies. So I mean, I think Parys Mountain has really got some legs to become another or a renewed metal mine in the UK. And as we're seeing in the UK, I mean, just today, I mean, there's a fairly big announcement for Cornish Metals with their Vision Blue announcement. I mean, I worked at Crofty, so I hand on heart wish those guys all the best. I mean, it's a terrific ore body and terrific deposit, and it's very dear to my heart. And I think there's a real development down there that obviously Sir Mick Davis and his crew have seen. We've seen Tungsten West, the revival of Tungsten West, and Scott Gold in Connaught up north. I mean, none of these are, and no disrespect intended to any of those companies, but none of them are massive. And I think in countries like the UK, where there's probably a bit more metal in the ground than people think, spread in different parts of the country. I mean, I think it's you can do smaller, economic and very economic developments without leaving a huge footprint. So good on those guys, and hopefully we can certainly join those in a sort of a pathway through to production.
Yes, certainly. Given how long the project's been around, is there much exploration upside remaining?
Yeah, there is, and we have a presentation on our website which goes into a bit of that. And one of the slides on there, so this Northern Copper Zone, it's really quite extensive. I mean, the mineralization starts not well for white. There's about 4 different ore bodies there: White Rock, Engine Zone, Lower Engine Zone, and then the Northern Copper Zone. I mean, White Rock mineralization basically goes to surface. We won't be mining it from surface. We start mining about 60 meters below. But that goes down to, I mean, it's a syncline structure. So I mean, the keel of the syncline goes down to about 600 meters. So the shaft is almost halfway there. But along the keel of the syncline, I mean, there has been so little exploration, Rob. I mean, it's a big area, and along from you've got from surface down to 600 meters, and the current Northern Copper Zone resource itself is about 10 million tons at 1.7 sort of copper equivalent, and that's from a total site resource of about 17 million tons. So it's a major part of it. That's a kilometre long, down to 550 meters deep. Not from surface. The top of that is about 300 meters. There's the outside of the wireframe makes up the block model. 600 meters away, there's a hole that's 15 meters at 2.5% copper. There's another one at 10 meters at 1% copper. They've just never been followed up. So I think in better markets, perhaps with more momentum, this people would have the company would have had the ability to raise a lot of money and actually just really drill this out. I don't think we don't need to do that now. I mean, the way the PEA is that we have an initial mine plan of 11 or 12 years. Sorry, Northern Copper Zone kicks in sort of year 6, year 7. So we've got plenty of time to get down there and sort of do some extensive exploration. But I want to do a bit of infill drilling on that Northern Copper Zone before we start mining. But look, I mean, I always say that with a drill rig, well, possession is 9/10 the law, and whilst you've got it, you just keep using it. So as long as we've got the money, we'll probably put a few sort of exploration holes in there as well.
Yeah. You've obviously been the CEO for around 7 months now. What's been the response from the locals around the Parys Mountain so far?
I'm over the moon with the response, to be honest with you, and I don't think I'm that surprised either. I mean, we're very fortunate in that the town of Amlwch, which is the town 2 miles to the north of the mine site on the coast. I mean, that was originally there as a port. That started as a port for the copper mine back in the day. And at one point, I'll get the number wrong, but at one point it was something like the 4th largest town in Wales, because I mean the Parys Mountain mine was so big. I mean at that point it was the largest copper mine in the world. But look, it's a population now of about 3,000 people. There's been a lot of industry on Anglesey that's closed in the last decade. I mean, go back sort of 12 years, and the Rio Tinto aluminium smelter shut down. The Wilver nuclear power station, which is 5 miles to the west. I mean, that's decommissioning. There was a bromide, the Octel plant, which was extracting bromine from seawater, which is all in the town of Amlwch as well. That's closed. And so they've all, it's very sad. I mean, they've just seen industry after industry just close, and there's been very little to replace it. So, unfortunately for me and for Anglesey shareholders, is that most people in that village, when they walk out of their house, the first thing they see when they look to the right is a big head frame on the mountain, which sort of overlooks the town. So they're all very familiar with it. You drive into the town, and the town. I forget the exact wording, but it's Amlwch, the town made from copper, or it's really part of the heritage of the town, and people are genuinely supportive. We've spoken to the town council, we've spoken to the county council, we've spoken to the MP, the Conservative MP, Virginia Crosby, and seriously, everybody is very supportive, and but then again, they're also very aware and very pragmatic that there has been a couple of false starts here. So, I'm very conscious that we have to manage people's expectations. I'm not. It's not like I come in as CEO and within 12 months we've got a mine up and running. There's still a lot of work to do. We have to finish the drilling. We have to do some confirmatory met test work. We've got to do geotech models. We've probably got to get an environmental impact assessment done. We've got to get the tailings permits. I mean, there's still work to do. So I'm very conscious that my job is to manage that expectation with shareholders, but also with local stakeholders as well. So so there's no need for people to send CVs to me just yet, but hopefully we'll get to that point.
Yeah, I was just going to say, once the mine is up in operation, obviously you'll be generating workers from the local area. What other knock-on effects would affect the town or that area because of that mine being in operation?
Well, so a full mining rate, we would be expecting to employ about 120 full-time direct employees at the site, and the multiplier factor around the community would be about another full-time indirect, about 500 jobs. So within the region, it's quite extensive, and obviously, we've had discussions with the town council, and we've employ local is the mantra that they expect from us, and we expect from ourselves. Now, obviously, there's not going to be all the skills available, but we'll deal with that how we can, and we'll talk to Coleg Menai, which is one of the local colleges, and hopefully we can start getting courses and get people trained up to be part of this community. I mean, it's currently a mine plan is a 12-year mine plan. I think it's going to be there a bit longer. So it's worth putting that investment into the community to skill up the workforce.
Many investors probably think it's difficult to permit a new mining operation, especially here in the UK nowadays. What's your response to that? And obviously, you've mentioned about some of the success stories that you've mentioned, Scots Gold, and a few others. But how difficult is it to permit mines then in the UK?
Well, I think, Rob, if you're starting from scratch, I think permitting a mine anywhere is very hard. There are so many different aspects to a mine plan. From the feasibility stage. When you look at the chapters within a feasibility, you would think the biggest chapter would be about sort of geology or mining or metallurgy, but it's not. It's about the environmental, it's about the social, and rehabilitation, all those sort of aspects. So it's very, very difficult. And there's been, well, look, I mean, it depends where you are in the world, but I mean, the governments have tried to look at different ways of streamlining processes and what have you. But from our perspective, where we benefit is that we are working in what's classified as a dormant mine site. So under the UK mining code, we're a dormant mine site. It's not a new development. In 1989, 1990, when they were sinking the shaft and doing the underground development, clearly this was an operating site. So that gives us a little bit of a head start. Well, not a little bit, I mean a lot of a head start, if I'm honest. So we have to put in, and we've already submitted a pre-application through to the North Wales Mine Planning Department, which is basically it's a request from us to them to say, okay, we want to restart this. What do you need from us? What permits do you need? What do we need environmental impact assessment, full one, or can we use the information from previous? So we're actually waiting for the response from that now, and we should get the response from that fairly soon. But we're just working on the assumption that we will need a complete EIS. So we've started some of the seasonal studies already, and really you've just got to do everything. You have a series of tasks, and you've just got to go through and knock them all off. And there's no point trying to fast track anything, because I've seen, and I've been involved with companies that have tried to fast track things, and it usually ends up as a disaster. Someone cuts a corner or something. So we want to apply world's best practice to what we're doing at Anglesey, and certainly within the Parys Mountain development. It's hard to put a time frame on it, but and I'm not going to say permitting is going to be an easy process. But the fact that there's a lot of disturbance here already, there's a lot of aspects from the previous mining that we have zero environmental liability on any of the old workings. That lies with Natural Resources Wales and the Welsh government. But there are some things that we can do, that we'll be doing, that will help what they're trying to do in terms of fixing up some of the old issues. So we can have quite a symbiotic relationship with those agencies. So I think we've got a lot to offer, both from an employment perspective and from a making sure this site is I don't want to say made good, because it makes it sound like it's bad, but you know what I mean, in terms of just putting it into a position whereby when mining finishes here, there's no horrific natural disaster that's going to happen or could go forward.
The company obviously has interest in iron ore assets, like you mentioned, in Sweden. How do you sort of envisage these assets fitting in with the base metals project?
Yeah, sure. But the Labrador asset is, I say, I mean, we own 12% of the company, so it's a fairly passive. Well, it's a very passive equity investment. So I mean, I look at that, and I see myself as the CEO of a company that has a 12% stake in another company. If we can be supportive to them in any way, shape, or form, then obviously we'll do what we can. But I mean, for all intents and purposes, that's a business being run out of Canada, and we wish them all the best. In terms of Drangersburg, well, look, I mean, we don't know yet, if I'm honest. I mean, there's a so I think we've got a tiger by the tail there. The feasibility study, or the pre-feasibility study, that was completed in 2012, generates some very big numbers. But I'm cognizant that we've got a market cap of £10 million, Rob. So we're not going to, we can't go out there and start developing 2.5 million ton per annum iron ore mines in Sweden off the bat. So there's a lot of work to do in terms of how we structure it, where it gets structured. And look, I mean, we've got a few ideas, and previous management obviously took the assets in Canada and in Labrador and spun them out into Labrador Iron Mine Holdings. Could we do something similar with Drangersburg? Well, we could, or we could keep it in and raise money and do the next round of work ourselves, or we could get partners in. I think the most important aspect though is that we own 19.9% of Drangersburg. We have a right of first refusal to go to 70%, which we're currently updating the 2012 pre-feasibility study to give us a sense as to where those numbers have moved to in the last decade. I anticipate those numbers will give us a better view as to how we regard the right of first refusal and whether or when we exercise that right. And from that point, it becomes, I mean, let's say we exercise and we end up with 70%. It's then trying to get the market to understand what the valuation of Drangersburg is and how it relates to our valuation in the market today. And there's the best way of doing that is obviously to look at other comps. There's other companies out there that have assets in Scandinavia or iron ore assets in other parts of Europe that you can sort of do comps on, and you've got to just try and get the market to recognise the value of the assets that you've got, and whether that's by aggressive promotion, whether that's by bringing a partner in to fund the next round of developments, or whether it's about selling the offtake, or there's these are just all things that anybody would sort of suggest as potential opportunities. I mean, all of those things are available at the moment, and that's what's so exciting about it, is that we've got it saddens me to say this, but I was up there, I was on site the day that the Russians invaded Ukraine, and we sat down at breakfast that morning, and it's a tragic state of events that's going on there, and I hate to sort of talk about sort of economic benefits from that, but there's 22 million tons of iron ore that was being exported from Russia into the European steel markets, and my view is that's gone for a generation now. So the European market and the UK, I mean, even though we're not in it anymore, we're still part of Europe. We've got to look to be more self-sufficient. We've got to look to shorten supply chains, and Anglesey has suddenly become a very, very strategic asset in that story.
Yeah, and I was just going to ask, what attracted you to that particular project, and obviously why iron ore in Sweden?
Well, in all honesty, Rob, I mean, for me, it's about quality. Having spent so much time in Australia and sort of working in broking and banking, and looking at all these assets in Australia, it's quite clear that the high quality product is the end of the market you want to be at, and the Swedish concentrate and pellet feeds, like Kiruna, LKAB's Kiruna and Grängesberg, I mean, they produce a sort of a plus 68% feedstock. Now, if you're putting higher grade feedstocks into your furnaces, it reduces the carbon footprint of that steel that's being produced. So, there's an environmental angle as well. Why Sweden? Well, I think Sweden's an amazing place to work. I mean, full respect and full credit to the mines department and the government over there over the last sort of 20, 30 years. They've done an amazing job. And what the Swedish government are doing with respect to low carbon or carbon neutral steel production is really, really quite something. You're probably aware there's a company called Hybrid, which is a joint venture between the Swedish government, SSAB, the steel firm, and also LKAB, the iron ore company, and they're using green hydrogen, sorry, to generate power for the steel plants. I think the first module is doing sort of 25,000 tons per annum, or maybe it's 50 now, but they're leading the world in this sort of green steel, and I think Sweden is given that the abundance of iron ore there. It is every likelihood that that's going to be the source of European steel for the next generation. So very happy to be doing business in Sweden. I mean, it's a great environment to do business, very high quality assets, and great people as well.
And as a conclusion, what news flow should investors be looking out for over the course of this year?
Yeah, good question, Rob, and obviously very important from an investor perspective. Well, look, I mean, we've got Parys corporately. We recently announced that we were doing the step down from the main board to AIM. So we had the EGM a couple of weeks ago, and our AIM admission date is the 8th of April. So everyone keep an eye out for that. That will hopefully bring a few more people into the stock. In terms of Parys Mountain, we're currently drilling. In fact, we just started the 10th and last hole of this program. And we're in the process of cutting that core now, and our geologist has been logging. So hopefully, it won't be too long before we get some assays. I think the turnaround of the labs we're using are a little bit shorter than they are in Australia at the moment. It's sort of conventional 25, 28 days. So look, hopefully we'll start having some results out. I mean, I'm always conscious of saying timeframes, but hopefully by the end of April, we'll start having some results. Look, it is infill drilling, so it shouldn't be any surprises, but it's always nice to get some results out. We will also hopefully have the first commentary back from the North Wales Mine Planning Authority with respect to what the requirements are from a permitting perspective. We've started the environmental work, so I mean there'll be sort of constant updates on that, and hopefully in the not too distant future we'll be sort of starting to communicate our plans for doing the infill drilling of the Northern Copper Zone and bringing that forward into the next phase of study. So, I mean, Parys Mountain is it's full on. I mean, it's going to be a lot of news flow out of Parys Mountain, and with Grangersberg, well, we were originally hoping to get the pre-feasibility update done before the end of March. We did have some delays, and we said this in an update recently. We did have some delays getting to site because of COVID. So that pushed that back a little bit, but it's a matter of weeks away, and hopefully that will generate some renewed interest in the Swedish iron ore project. So, but we've got quite a bit on this year, and hopefully we'll have some more people to help me do it over the next few months as well.
Yeah, certainly, Joe. Really appreciate your time. Give us an update on Anglesey, and obviously making everyone aware that there is mining here in the UK and even in Wales. So, and obviously it's a historic mine, as you said, and you're bringing it back to life. So obviously wish you all the well for the remaining of this year and ongoing, and maybe come on to the podcast again later this year or beginning part of next year if you've got some further updates.
Would love to. Well, really appreciate the time, and thanks to all the listeners.
Yeah, and if our listeners want to reach out to you, if they want some more information, if they've got some questions, how can they go about doing that? Are you across any social media platforms?
Yeah, so we're trying to get a bit more active on Twitter, LinkedIn. The website's been updated. At the start of the year, presentations on the website, and anybody wants to give me a call, my mobile phone number is on the back of the presentation. So. I'm more than happy to speak to anybody, whether they be shareholders or people who are considering being shareholders, Rob. So I'll speak to anybody to get the news out there.
Yeah, great.
Spread the word.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, you're being listed. Is it on the AIM on the 8th of April?
8th of April is the admission date. Yeah,
admission date. Okay, yeah. So this will be out around about then. So those that are listening, have a look at all the information. Look at the website. Follow them on Twitter, and if you've got any questions, obviously you can reach out to Joe as well. So hope you enjoyed listening, and like I said, there is mining here in the UK, and obviously Joe has just given us an update on Anglesey, and obviously historic mine, as I mentioned. So appreciate if you can share this episode amongst friends, family, pass it to others around the world, wherever you're listening from, and we wish Joe and Anglesey all the best for their upcoming AIM listing, and obviously moving forward with the project. So until next time, happy mining.